channel Bookworms. Today I am bringing you a Exorcist reading / watching vlog. This is my copy. It's really creepy and it's one of the really small like 1970s 80s style short paperbacks, which I really love. So if you don't know what The Exorcist is already, it is a cult classic, the OG possession story that was really big and disturbing during its time period. This was written in 1971, so it was like the first proper possession story. Loads and loads of people loved this, and I really want to enjoy this as well. I am already somewhat of the way through this and I won't spoil it for anybody. I will keep my thoughts very brief. So let's go. My first reading sprint with The Exorcist, I am around, let me see, I'm 144 pages into this story, so I'm in part 2, chapter 5, and what I can tell you about it so far is that it is so fast paced in terms of how much changes throughout the chapters. And in this story we have a lot of Chris's thoughts and feelings and things like that, so it is very heavy on the dialogue side of things. So Chris is an actress and she has some housekeepers who look after her house and her child Regan, and Regan is the little child who gets possessed. I don't think that's a spoiler, I think everybody knows that at this point. So this kind of starts off really intriguing, where the prologue starts in Iraq, where they find a talisman, and it is so creepily written and the details make it so cinematic that you can really picture it in your head. The chapters move really quickly. It can be very simple in the case of we're just following Chris's thoughts, day-to-day life, and then it's, oh, and then this happened. So it's very mundane, but sprinkles like little horrors here and there, and that is so incredible. I really love when you can be taken on this journey, but the journey's not slow. Everything is moving quickly. It's just enjoyable and intriguing to really delve into the happenings in this household, as well as all the other characters who affect the plot. It is such a staple piece of fiction. It's written in the 70s, so it is a piece of its time, and it does highlight how women are during that time period, and highlights the fact that there was a shift between just being a stay-at-home parent to a more balanced working life. So obviously Chris is an actress, but she is also a mum, and so it does highlight how she moves between work life and parent life, and also how different the parenting styles are. Chris is very much a hands-on kind of parent. She does give a lot over to her housekeepers to look after Regan and everything like that, but the dad is currently kind of absent in the story, so it's really intriguing to see that element kind of highlighted and discussed, but in a subtle way. So it does play on that element. It does talk about how Chris kind of was the person to initiate the divorce between her husband and herself. So that was an interesting take as well, because during this time that was probably taboo and just happening. So it's really interesting to see this author talk about women and that movement during this time. So I'm interested to see where the religious side of things go within this book, to see if it's very much taking the traditional Christianity route, or if it's leaving it open to interpretation. Currently, what's being shown is very much the Catholic Christianity side of things. Currently, I am loving it. There's so much going on, and for such a short book, like I'm already like almost halfway through it, so it must be a good read. And the audiobook definitely helps. I've been listening along with the Audible track for this book that is narrated by the author himself, so it adds like an element of creep to it, but it also makes the story kind of more concise, and I can follow it along a lot easier than if I was just reading it by myself, because it is written kind of differently because it is a more older book, and I've been reading more modern recently. So yeah, this is very intriguing, and I'm really excited to see how I feel once I actually finish it, and then also comparing it with the movie. Enough from me. I'm going to go read some of The Exorcist, and I will take you with me. So I've now finished The Exorcist. The last clip that I've shown was of me reading this on my way back from work, and okay, I have a lot of thoughts on this. Originally, I thought it was a 5-star read, and that's what I've put into my Goodreads following initially finishing it. But on reflection, I think that it's probably a 4, not so much a 5. And I think that's mainly due to pacing. The first half of this book was so good. It built the dread, and you could tell that something was happening, and the fact that Regan is a young child and she's saying and doing these things makes it very disturbing. The pacing is just a bit off. The chapters are very long. I'm not really sure how the title kind of represents the overall story and the overall plot of this book. I know that he took a case that was real life and kind of adapted it to create this story. So he has fictionalized a real story to create The Exorcist. But for me, I feel like this story isn't so much about the exorcist himself. It's more about Regan and the family and how this possession affects the family. So I'm not really entirely sure that the title really fits the story. I really loved how this story highlighted the effects that this possession had on the people within close vicinity to Regan, and it follows that aspect. And how much detail this gives you in terms of exorcisms, and how atheists can start to kind of believe in this element of the supernatural. There is positive themes within this story, don't get me wrong, I really loved it. It's just the pacing throughout that maybe drops it down slightly for me. Like I mentioned, the first half was incredible. It was building dread. I was anticipating what was coming next. Then when we got into the abyss, it was really long. And for me, I really enjoyed chapters that are shorter and they're easier to get through. So I think that area of the book could have been like 3 or 4 extra chapters. But then I think that's just an edit type of deal. It's not the overall story. Those are like my nitty picks of the story. Like I mentioned, the good parts about this was detail in descriptions of how the family feel, like morals and ethics. So it does highlight a lot of things and covers a lot of different themes, which I'm quite surprised by for a book written back in the day. It is ahead of its time, and I love how this author used the fact that she was a child to make this more disturbing. There are parts of my book that were missed within the audiobook, and I think that was done on purpose, but I'm not entirely sure. There were parts of this story that I was reading that I wasn't hearing in my audiobook, which are certain words and phrases that were a bit explicit. Don't get me wrong, this book does not dial out all of the explicit elements. It graphically details things that she does to her body, but there are parts where it gets cut out, so I don't know if that was a choice in the author reading a different version of this story. But yeah, I felt like there was more graphic detail in my copy versus the audiobook. But I don't think it is as scary as people think. For me, it's more dark and disturbing, not scary. So now I'm looking forward to checking out the movie, which I am seeing tomorrow night. So I'm having like a cinematic experience with the 1973 version of The Exorcist. So the 1973 version is getting shown within Cineworld over here in the UK as part of their horror season. Really looking forward to seeing this in the cinema. When I booked my tickets, I was the only person in the screening. So I'm really hoping there's more people. So I'm interested to know what you think of The Exorcist. Did you love it? What were your thoughts on the theming and the different elements that have been discussed in the book? And how did it compare to the movie for you? I am really interested to learn about people's thoughts and opinions on these types of books. So do let me know in the comments. I love to start that conversation with you. I will check back in soon once I've watched the movie.
All hell has broken loose.
You'll probably see that I was planning on watching this movie in the cinema. I went to the cinema, really good, really loved the experience, and one of the guys who work at Warner Brothers popped up on the screen to give us a little insight into The Exorcist, what the author wanted from the movie, how the director had planned the movie, and how William Peter Blatty had a lot of creative control over the movie, and he chose the director and also produced it, so he had a lot of creative say in the movie. We got some interesting facts from Warner Brothers themselves on this movie, and then obviously watched majority of the movie in the cinema until the screen broke and it was stuck on the scene where Merrin is heading up the stairs to start the exorcism, literally the pinnacle of the movie, and the screen breaks and everybody can just hear what's happening but we can't see anything. So it's really frustrating that that's the point where the screen breaks down and we're not able to watch it. So luckily enough, I didn't actually pay to go and see this. I have a card that I pay monthly where I can go and see unlimited amount of movies. They are planning to show it again on Wednesday, so people who had paid for it could go back and rewatch it if they wanted to or get a refund. But I kind of just left and ended up paying £3 on YouTube to rent The Exorcist to watch the last 25 minutes of the movie. I do have to remember that this was filmed in the 70s because it does have that feel, like the vintage feel, which is incredible. I love those types of movies. I'm glad that I've watched it because it is a pinnacle movie of its time. However, I don't understand the overhype of it being the scariest movie of all time. I worked myself up to watch like this incredible movie that's gonna scare me, but as somebody who watches horror all the time, it just wasn't it. It wasn't scary, and I wouldn't say it's the scariest movie of all time. However, I will say that it is disturbing. I love the fact that it's a disturbing movie and how like Reagan is depicted in the movie, because they don't hold out on the stuff that she has to say and stuff that she does. I'm really glad that they kept the very graphic nature of this movie in, which made it very disturbing. The fact that she was 12 made it even more disturbing. It's not scary, but it is disturbing. Something that I didn't really enjoy about the movie was the fact that a lot of the plot was missing. The sense of the book had a lot of dialogue and focusing on thoughts and opinions of the exorcist and the priest himself, and then also with Chris the mother. So we kind of know a lot about her thoughts and her opinions, as well as the priest and what he's going through. I just feel like there was a lack of dialogue, which I didn't really enjoy all too much. I know what they were thinking because I read the book. There was parts of it missing. It was quite interesting in that sense, where I was going in and waiting for a certain scene to happen, and it just wasn't. Like the fact that all of a sudden his friend had the tapes and was playing it back to him, but we didn't get that scene where he was asking for the tapes from Chris the mother. Just jumped straight to the playback and how what was said was in English. So it's little details I feel like were missing in the movie that might have made it a lot better, and it also then made me feel less connected to these characters, whereas in the book I felt very much connected to the characters. I really enjoyed the graphics and how they made this with the effects that they had in the 70s. It was really, I think that really made the movie. It was very vintage, and I could see why the actress who played Reagan had back issues, because I swear that convulsing, woo, that would have made anybody have back issues. I feel like with that, the effects were done brilliantly. And also another thing that I really enjoyed was the fact that this was set in autumn and it created that cozy vibe, whereas I feel like the book missed that element. The fact that they made it very autumn based, really cozy, set during this time period, was really interesting and a good touch. And also the music score was really good. I really loved the element of music in movies. I feel like that adds an extra element to it, and this one definitely didn't disappoint. I really loved when the music was included and how it really sets the scene. So the movie overall was decent. I'm glad that I watched it. I can see parallels now to other movies that I've watched, but I wouldn't say it's the scariest movie of all time. But it was an interesting movie to watch, and I enjoyed it nonetheless. And do check out The Exorcist if you're interested. I go in with it knowing that it's not perfect. It has its issues, but it is an incredible read and watch. And to end this off, I will say I definitely prefer reading books before watching the movie. I get a more rounded idea of the story when reading, so the book for me was better than the movie. That might be an unpopular opinion, but that is how I viewed it. So thank you so much for watching and sticking this out. Do let me know what your thoughts are on The Exorcist, and I hope to see you again soon. So until next time, keep your pages turning and embrace the darkness. Bye!